None of the games here were featured in my criminally underrated PS1 RPGs video because I consider them more as hidden gems. After all, how can they be underrated if they were actually barely rated because most people don't know them? So these are the 10 best JRPG hidden gems, the definitive list on the PlayStation 1. Let's begin! Number 10, Saga Frontier 2. It's a brutally hard game with two different protagonists, Gustav and Will. My advice is to start with Gustav as his route is easier to understand and get into. He's a heir to the throne, but thanks to a corrupted political plot, he becomes an exile, so starts his quest to take back the throne, while Will is searching for the real cause behind his parents' death. Obviously, the two routes will intertwine occasionally until reaching a merging point in terms of plot. Saga Frontier 2 has a few differences between its battle mechanics. Like in most Saga games, there isn't a normal experience system, rather you take turns to fight and preferably focus on one weapon. That way the characters can increase their stats, learn abilities and perform combos. There's also duels that are a little bit like Suikoden, but battles take place in regular turns, and then the large battles where you can strategize at first before taking on large numbers of enemies. It's a great game, just remember it's very hard, but it delivers a unique experience like no other. Number 9, Chocobo Dungeon 2. Sure, it's not exactly hidden, more like extremely forgotten. Since I like the one on the Wii, I thought about playing this one. The first game remained exclusive to Japan, but we got the sequel. It's a roguelike RPG where you enter randomly generated dungeons to walk around, searching for the stairs to the next area, and so on until you reach the exit. Yes, you control the Chocobo as you look around for items and fight enemies on real-time, turn-based battles, like in most roguelike RPGs. That's the only way to level up, but remember that if you die, you get thrown out of the dungeon and go back to level 1. It takes place in a village where Mog and Chocobo are treasure hunters, but they meet a little girl called Shiroma who gets kidnapped, so it's up to our little heroes to go rescue her. Hard to believe, but other characters can join Chocobo here and they can be either controlled by the AI or a second player. Honestly, it's like a rogue type of game for beginners and it's actually pretty good. I think it's a great gateway into the genre. Number 8, Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen. This is a remaster of the original game on the Super Nintendo. I did consider this one for my criminally underrated video, but I feel it's been barely rated outside Japan. Both versions didn't sell well and the game had close to zero publicity. It's a real-time strategy RPG where you control several small groups of warriors and monsters alike. You can mess around with the formations on the menus and come up with all types of parties. The more you advance, the more characters or creatures or formations you can acquire. The goal is to follow a campaign of several different routes where your decisions actually affect the flow of the story. First, you select which groups of characters will participate on each map. Then you select the destinations you want them to move to, like towns, areas, or a specific spot to intercept the enemies. Interception provokes a battle that will be played on turns but entirely by the AI. You have no control here other than the ability to use certain cards for spells, buffs or debuffs. Once the battle is over, a victor will be determined and you'll be back at the map to continue on your quest. Rinse and repeat. Repetitive, yes, but it's so fun to play, it's actually alright. Can't believe this game's still a hidden gem nowadays. When it's so influential, it should be up there among the classics. Number 7, Jade Cocoon. This game has been compared to Pokémon for reasons you'll clearly see today. The story follows Levant living in a small village. His goal is to take on his deceased father's footsteps to become a cocoon master. Cocoons are, well, like the Pokeballs where monsters are born so you can raise them and train them. So the village gets attacked by demons one day and so starts your quest to put an end to it all with the help of your creatures. Explorations will mostly take place in the large forests or jungles around the village, including several different ruins. It's your job to capture these monsters so that you can use them in battle against your enemies. In fact, once you get your first minions, you'll be able to directly control their turns during combat. This is bound by a classic triangle attack, with one element being strong against the other, and so on. So you see, it kinda does play very similar to a classic monster collecting and training game, but mixed with a traditional style, Jade Cocoon makes it up for a classic turn-based RPG, more so than any other Pokemon clone out there. Number 6. Sayuki Journey West. This is a grid-based tactical RPG that's heavily inspired by one of the 4 classic Chinese novels, the same novel that inspired Dragon Ball Z. You will control the monk Sanso, who can be male or female, in a journey from China to India. With the help of the beast god Goku and several other characters, they will travel across several towns and get involved into all sorts of trouble. Battle maps will be small initially with a few characters involved, but as you make progress they will become more intricate and complex. It is recommended to grind whenever you can in this game, since it has some unexpected difficulty spikes. While Sanso can use healing magic and summon spells, the rest of the party can transform into powerful monsters for a short period of time. The penalty though is that there can only be one transformed character at a time. So the game plays around with the elements and the terrain somewhat often. Overcoming them is the key to success. It's a solid game with a light-hearted story, one I recommend to fellow RPG tactical lovers out there. Number 5. Front Mission 3. Another strategy RPG is Front Mission 3, one that belongs to a series that's very obscure outside of Japan. We never got the first 2 games until the remake of the first one on the Nintendo DS, so this third entry was the first Front Mission we ever got. The story follows 2 Japanese mech pilots that find something they weren't supposed to, so now the government is after them. However, this game has 2 completely different routes. After the first several hours of it, you'll face a decision that'll let you choose which one you'd like to play first. Everything relies heavily on parts, weapons, and armor. Knowing which enemy part to attack first is crucial, as it can increase or decrease the difficulty of each foe in the battlefield. Positions like height or distance can affect the flow of combat as well. Of course, you can customize your mechs, but it does take a while to understand what's good and what's not. Overall, it's quite an original game that used to be slightly known during its early years. Time went on and many other PS1 classics overshadowed it. Hopefully this video serves to make people remember or at least become aware of it. Number 4. Dragon Valor. Dragon Valor is yet another game with different scenarios to play and decisions that affect the story. However, this is an action RPG by Namco. In fact, it plays more like a generational game where you'll experience each route with the son of the previous main character, and so on for each chapter. It isn't that long though, so don't worry, but your next character depends on who you marry during each chapter. Dragon Valor is a pretty linear game in terms of gameplay mechanics. You will traverse different areas to fight different enemies, but your goal will always be to find the dragon and slay it with a magical sword. Controls are a bit outdated and could have been better, but it's not like the game's brutally hard, so you'll get used to them. What matters is that they're responsive even with the platforming and the camera movement. It's totally worth playing, especially because of the generational feature, which makes the story all the more interesting. Definitely one of the best hidden gems on the system. Number 3. Thousand Arms. Thousand Arms is a game not to be taken seriously. It's very fun to play and it delivers a traditional adventure, but the truth is, the game's a comedy that includes a dating simulator. Mice is trained by his father to become a ladies' man in a steampunk world. He is the chosen blacksmith whose goal is to stop an evil organization of cyborgs from reviving chaos in the world. But it just so happens that he'll need to deeply bond with at least one female character. So starts his quest of trying to stop the evil robots and, well, date the girls to see whose intimacy level he can increase. Yeah. Like many RPGs of this era, characters are small sprites, including mice, when you move around and explore, but during battle, which is played in turns, we'll see the full-sized bodies of each. Only one character can face against the enemy, and 2 others can support from the back. They usually serve as healers or buffers, or can even use spells, depending on what you choose. The same penalties apply for your foes. It's a very fun combat, I'll admit, even though it can be somewhat slow sometimes. In the end, it's quite a unique and entertaining RPG, one that I think it's among the best hidden gems on the PS1. Number 2, Cortia, The Word of Fate. This is a grid-based tactical RPG where you choose between 2 main characters. Eventually, you'll need to play both, which is okay as it has an amazing story and battle system. It was developed by Atlus, but they got Final Fantasy artist Yoshitaka Amano to design all the characters. The game revolves around the Cortia, powerful summon cards that are intrinsically mysterious. Some are extremely dangerous and therefore, some twisted people out there are trying to use them. A rebel group is already formed to put an end to this plot, but let me tell you, it can go very deep and political sometimes, usually with different perspectives making characters clash often. So the character development is strong here, especially on Lacrima Christie, one of the 2 main leads. She is one of my all-time favorite female protagonists. Now, the battles are placed on grids, and your characters can either use regular attacks or use their cards. Cards can be used to cast magic spells or summon monsters to aid you in battle. It's nothing complicated, so it's easy to understand and perfect for beginners. But like any other tactical RPG out there, it gets harder the more you advance. This is an excellent game, and by far, one of the best JRPG hidden gems on the PlayStation 1. Number 1, Vanguard Bandits. Another marvelous game, this one localized by Working Designs. The world is at the brink of war over territories and political beliefs, including religious and philosophical beliefs. And in the middle of it all, several characters that can pilot these knight-type mechs fight in a medieval setting. So it's up to Bastion to determine the fate of the world in several different paths out there. Some decisions will heavily affect the flow of the story and eventually put you in a different route or ending. Each one of them takes around 10 to 12 hours to complete, so they're short enough to increase its replay value a lot. Battles are played on grids in terrains within an isometric view. Your mechs have several commands to choose from: attack, defend, avoid, counter. Then there's flanking, cooldown if you consume too much AP, which means there's a fatigue system. It does get in the way often, but it also applies to your enemies, so it's balanced. Also, the terrain matters, and it will play around the action points to increase or decrease your movement. Vanguard Bandits, it's definitely the best game on this list. It's very expensive nowadays, but fortunately, you can emulate it or still find it for cheap on the PSN. Alright guys, as you saw, half of the list were strategy RPGs. That's because, well, the genre itself is a hidden gem almost as a whole. 80% of tactical RPGs on every single console are, well, hidden gems or obscure games, right? Anyway, that is my definitive list on the best JRPG hidden gems for the PlayStation 1. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!